Hi, so I want to talk about a secondary strategy that I use to mitigate risk. So the strategy is to wager multiple times on the same bet throughout the season. So for example, one of my favorite bets is to bet on the Eastern and Western Conference NBA champions, especially if there's a clear-cut favorite. But I don't want to bet one lump sum at a time because you never know what's going to happen. You know, the head coach might get sick or the star player might blow an ACL and your money's gone. You know, basically, if you put in a lump sum like that, you have that high risk of putting all your money basically on one player, even though you're betting on a team. So, for example, one of my favorite bets, especially for the past 5-6 years, is to bet on whatever team LeBron James is on, because basically that team is going to be the clear-cut favorite. But what I don't do is I don't place all my money in one lump sum at the beginning of the season. I spread it out for even 4, 5, 6 times throughout the season, depending on the fluctuation of the odds. And I'm also doing that not just to mitigate risk, but also to gauge lots of times just whether that team's actually going to do well or not. In which case, I won't bet all of the money if for whatever reason the team is struggling and it doesn't seem like they're going to win. And so in the 2017 season, there are really two clear-cut favorites. One is Cleveland Cavaliers in the East. There's really no other team that's going to win the East. Let's face it. With LeBron James on the Cavs, lots of times they're going to win. Though he is getting up there in age, so it's really hard to say. But another clear-cut favorite is really the Golden State Warriors, because they have 3 or 4 star players there, and also because Tim Duncan on the San Antonio Spurs actually retired. So you have so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to spread out my bets throughout the season, and that'll mitigate the risk of depending on too much of one player. So let me demonstrate that here. So for example, this isn't sports, but this is the presidential election that I've bet on. So the initial wager that I put in was $500 on Hillary Clinton, but there was a more favorable odd later on, and I put in slightly more money, and I'll be doing that throughout the election cycle, just to spread out the risk of certain things, surprises that might happen, or unpredictable things that might happen. But it's actually a little bit more predictable here in terms of sports, because one of the things you do want to guard against is your star player having a blown ACL, in which case your bet is basically gone. So that is what I'm going to do, is allot one specific sum of money, but bet multiple times on the same wager throughout the season. And I've mentioned this before, but one of the things I don't bet on is games and the over-under on games, unless very rarely do I do that. Usually I do bet the long-term, more predictable bets, and in that way, if you're patient enough, you will win 80 to 90% of the time. So for example, just in my case, where I put in $225, and now I'm up to $1,000 in winnings and wagers, just using that strategy in a little bit over 2 years. So if you're patient and if you pick the right long-term bets, and you bet with a strategy that mitigates the risk, you will be able to win fairly easily in a lot of these, especially with some of these very predictable results here. So in any case, I hope this helps, and if you have any suggestions, or if you have any strategies that you use, please put your comments down below, and thank you for watching.